I can fit easily 3 of my cars in there and be able to maneuver in and out. So I'm going standard. I'm not saying that we're matching everybody's car, and we're not actually striping the parking spaces. So three cars can fit here just fine.
Well,
Depending
for things
on
to
what
come
you
into
drive.
compliance, they're gonna wipe out all that parking that people really had in, like you said last night.
But before
So
we
you're gonna have all those extra cars.
before we
Which is how
open it
many?
to questions,
3, 4,
please,
6.
please, before we open it to questions, I need her to get to the rest of the numbers, okay? It's important that we get to the maximum you can pack in here from stop sign to stop sign, or corner to corner, and all the way along.
I came up with a maximum of 46 vehicles.
And that's
this-
allowing for driveways, not proper turning radiuses for the driveways, but just parked right up against the driveway, so you can still use your driveway. Okay.
with the removal of the vehicles that would be in the line of sight, that brings that number down. But theoretically, if there were no rules or laws about, or codes about line of sight,
When you say line of sight, you mean the stop sign issue?
stop sign,
Feedback from line of sight.
crosswalks, the vision, the sight needed to properly maneuver through an intersection. And with removing that number, I basically come to about 47 cars that we can pack in there. But now, by removing the line of sight issues, but following standard, which I said earlier, I know you can fit more here, but I have to follow standards because my 46 number came from a meeting where you said, well, how many cars can we pack in here? So I figured out how many cars we could pack in here. We're down to 36 spaces, which really,
And 40, 46, 47 to 36,
yeah,
how do you get there?
by removing the line of,
The true illegal parking.
the true illegal
Okay.
parking.
The point is that those parking spots shouldn't exist today. Okay, they're creating safety hazards. To some extent, we come in and put stop signs there because there's a safety issue there. You can't cross the road. So we're trying to slow people down to stop at the corners so people don't get run over. But what's important here is that we're going from 36 to 36 plus scooter parking. And the reality is you can get more, because we're not going out there and
supposed to get
saying,
scooters?
here's a stripe.
Are we all supposed to get scooters then?
No. But what I'm
Well, that would help.
It depends what you drive. I heard you say earlier.
What I'm trying to say to you is that we're not painting stripes on the road. We're not going to define the parking spot.
Maybe we
If
should.
you can squeeze them in now, you can squeeze them in after the project. The only thing that we're truly impacting, besides the head-end parking, is the line of sight issue. Okay, and that's
Hold on,
only
I have a
because
question.
to get in
If you're not painting residential parking stripes, then we don't get a sticker, and then anybody can park on the street too.
That includes a restaurant.
That's the other thing that we
Yeah,
wanted to
we
raise.
lose. No,
That's
nobody.
the-
Everybody will be parking in our parking
That's
places.
the other
don't even
thing
live
that
here.
we want to point out here. We have the ability to bring to this neighborhood a residential parking program and designate by painting on the edge of pavement residential parking only, and by signage residential parking only. Okay?
Will we have that in writing before you start this? Will we
Yeah,
have that?
thank
Are
you.
we gonna guarantee? I have 17 bedrooms in the corner of Virginia Market. We have 70 bedrooms on the 800 block and the 900 block. You're gonna tell us you're giving us 46 parking places? We need 70 in 2 blocks.
But you need 70 now. You don't have it.
We
Okay.
don't.
No,
And
you
you're gonna,
don't.
so you're gonna take
Well,
more
that's
from us?
Yeah.
We're talking of
Why are
2
you
blocks, the
eliminating
800 and 900
But
blocks. Go count your bedrooms on your city charter. Go count them.
Paul,
It's 70,
I
sir.
know.
So you're telling us you're giving
And
us
what about
46
the
in
two
5 blocks?
restaurants and the 2
Big deal.
We have
churches?
to fight with the restaurant
And the strip club.
to park.
And you ask if we put it in writing. Absolutely, Paul,
Can you give me 17
John, what
spaces?
would it take? No, I cannot. And,
Okay.
and
How
when you
many
asked
did
for
you-
your parking variance, did you consider
Come over here, John.
that you needed seven?
Don't be scared.
The city asked me to get the variance to move the building back in 1964 because they were worried about parking then. And you know that because you investigated. So in 1964, the
You got
city
a
commission
variance
was
for
worried
providing on-street parking.
to move the building back. It might not be in writing, but you know that it was moved back. And the reason it was moved back is because I was putting 8 bedrooms in that half a block.
So
And that's
my
in
point is that I can't
1964.
manufacture the parking spots. What I can do is mitigate the impact of commercial parking here. I can't come here and say 100% of this is residential parking. That you wouldn't like because your people have visitors and you don't want everything designated. But there's a mix that and a residential program that can be done. And we heard that LC Bonet parks over here. I don't know whether that's...
It drifts all the way, and they're worried about when you take ours, it's going that way.
Right, and what I'm saying to you is residential parking program will help mitigate. And will it be in writing? I imagine we could designate that before the project starts.
When you have a new development going on, how many parking spaces do they have to have for apartment or per
I
bedroom?
don't have that answer. I don't have anybody-
Per single-family residence in the historic district, you have to have 1 parking space.
One parking per
Off-street.
apartment.
Off-street parking
So I
space.
have 12, I have a right to have 12.
Not the right, it's what you have to provide off-street to building.
Okay,
That's what it is.
so we can't
you're done with
reduce the
screw.
parking.
Like when El Rancho tore
So
down
how
their
many-
building and rebuilt it, they had to provide 1 parking space per room, and they did it by elevating and parking underneath.
Right, well, we can't elevate, we can't reduce parking spaces, you know?
Whether
So you have to wait, you know what we have.
So you don't have to.
And we have a lot of residencies. That's like putting on Flagler Avenue 70 houses. This is multi. This is not Flagler.
Flagler high
This is
traffic?
not Duck Avenue where they had
Right.
single
Who
family
determines
homes.
the high traffic
We have
areas?
70 bedrooms in 2 blocks, 2 short blocks. You know? Come on, and a restaurant. And now a museum.
If ADA minimum requirements are 36 inches, why are we not just doing that all the way? I understand that you're saying they need passing room or whatever.
Turnaround.
How often do you
That's
need
not-
to have turnaround?
That's not the minimum requirement.
It is. I read it on their site.
You have to consider what you come up in that 36 inches. When you roll out a sidewalk down the road, you have to consider what you encounter. You encounter a driveway, for instance. That 36 has to be the maximum cross slope from the property side to the front of that
How many
is
driveways
1
do
in
we have
50.
here?
Okay, 1 in 50. That's just almost flat. Okay. Now, you need a driveway apron to come off of that, a little slant down
Right.
towards the pavement. That cannot be in the 36 inches. That has to be within the width of the sidewalk, though. So if I made it 4 inches, if I made it a standard sidewalk is 6 inches tall, okay, we can cheat that down a little bit, but the standard is 6. Now, if I make it only a 4-foot sidewalk, that makes your
grade, I
driveway
understand.
grade like this,
Okay,
almost
so
45
how
degrees.
how many
45 degrees.
how many driveways do we have on this side of the street?
I think I
over
just
there?
counted 5.
5.
If I counted correctly.
So because of 5, we're making the sidewalk
Well,
5
well,
feet
it's not
Because of
wide.
standard,
for
it's
the
not only
length.
that.
There is so
Not
much
getting this.
more to the code. Plus, you know, what ADA gives us are minimum standards. We still have other standards and codes that we have to follow. But just hitting the ADA, you know, we have our turnaround spaces. We have utilities that are in the right of way. Now,
That's on the
now
other
let's
side of
talk
the
about
street.
encroachment.
Oh,
If
yeah.
there's encroachment afoot that what the city has policy to allow, now our sidewalk's down to 2 feet. I mean, there's just things that, it's not as cut and dry as just saying 36
ADA
inches.
design is very complex, okay? To read one section, one paragraph of ADA design, I've been exposed to it for 15 years, and I am nowhere near conversing in it, I have to turn to staff and say, teach me.
You guys realize on the site where it says to go to ADA requirements for Monroe County, that's a dead site. There is no information. I mean, for us public. I was forwarded to it by you. Yeah, you told me to go to the Monroe County ADA requirements.
Can you forward that email?
Yeah,
back
it's
to
a
me?
dead site. I've checked it out, but it just makes it harder for us to understand exactly what we're trying to do here. Personally, if Varela to Watson was not included, I'd have no issue. If Mr. Keenan did not lose a 40-year-old wall and the 40 trees behind the wall and the corner of the pool and the deck and the 150-year-old avocado tree, that would be fine.
Avocado tree,
But because it's going.
There's no issue with that avocado tree.
Yes, it is, ma'am. Your sidewalk is on the root structure of that tree, which will cause it to die and fall in the street.
No, we will have a certified arborist.
Then
It's required that the contractor do that, and that tree, if need be, will be root proof.
I
And they'll be
suggest
looked at, so
I suggest
that's not
exempting
slated
that
for
block
removal.
like you've exempted the block from Varela to White, where Sandy's has head-in parking.
We
That,
didn't exempt it. We
well,
didn't have the money.
you're not including it in this list here.
You know,
That is included on the list.
To go from
I don't
one
see
side
Sandy
to
here
the other.
tonight.
when
What
we
happened?
bid this project,
He was
Yes,
here.
ma'am.
we bid option A and option B. Option A was to go to Windsor to Jose Marti. Option B was to go from Windsor to Varela, because we wanted to see what the bids would come in at, what we were going to get. We could not afford option A. We could afford option B. So we did try to go
You
all
have
the way.
a very good sidewalk all the way along
Oh,
Graveview
yeah.
Park. Why would you have to destroy
Well,
that?
actually, it's
Why would
not
that be more
a very
expensive
good
than
sidewalk.
over there?
You
It's
may
not a
think,
I walked it a lot. That's
yeah,
why.
but we have cross slope issues. I mean, in front of the old Mr. Gatto's building, it's in horrible shape. We have issues with cross slopes at driveways that no longer exist. I mean, there are issues.
Yeah, there is.
Yes, sir.
Let's assume for a moment that the current number of parking spaces, excluding the illegally parked line of sight issues, let's say it's a wash, right, in terms of parking spaces, give or take.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay. When this museum opens for business, okay, this is going to take the amount of traffic in this neighborhood and dramatically increase it. My question would be, do they have a variance for parking spaces, or do they have to build a parking lot here to accommodate the people that are coming so it doesn't impact all the people coming in?
I had arranged for the planner, or tried to arrange for the planner to come tonight and answer that type of question.
Yeah.
That's a question that we're going to write down and get you an answer. Okay. But I suspect they're going to have to provide one or the other in order to open. Okay. They haven't opened because they have to get donations to bring their building up to the front. For instance, an ADA stairway and an elevator chair up that stairway, ADA bathrooms, et cetera, et cetera. They've been chipping away at the list all along. ADA sidewalk into their building. Still not complete. It has to connect to something, okay, in order for it to be compliant. So I threw, that was one of my first questions at the last meeting we had here. And I actually talked to Alex about it. There's some problems with it. I've also talked to the planning department about it. There's some problems with the parking lot. It's not as easy as you would think. The last time I proposed a parking lot to solve a front-end parking on a project of structure, and it wasn't permissible in that district. I can't answer the question. I'm not zoning, I'm not a planner, and I can't go there, but we can get you the answer.
That's one of the reasons why I asked if there was a feasibility study. And I believe if you had a feasibility study, that there'd be a different decision made. We have a fundamental problem in that, maybe a couple of them, in that the pedestrian action committee did not survey the neighborhood, did not advise the neighbors that they were going to make this decision. And that decision was made arbitrarily. Now it's after the fact that you're informing the folks it's going to happen. It should have been before the fact.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, totally.
We all agree. 207 people agree, actually.
I took in 90 signatures myself.
Thank you.
Go
237.
ahead, Christine.
You know, I think that there's a lot of people in the community that look for common sense and logic. You know, I live 3 doors. I live on Grinnell. But I look at Varela and I see it as a highly functioning street. It has sidewalks, it has parking. My next block, you know, I have sidewalks. And I want to tell you, my sidewalk is 36 inches. I have a driveway apron with the slope that you're talking about. I think most of the sidewalks are 36 inches. The next block of Grinnell has no sidewalks. So I think there's a lot of people in town. One of the reasons I'm here, because this is my neighborhood, we look at Bahama Village, we look at so many streets in this town that have no sidewalks. And here we're talking about tearing up, I won't say perfectly good sidewalks, but we're looking for some logic, and we're looking for a government that isn't so adversarial with the people who are the taxpayers. We're looking for some common sense and common ground. Now, from the city's point, I understand you had a lawsuit. You have to do something about it. I don't think there's anybody sitting out here that doesn't want people in wheelchairs and things to have access. But you got gravel on a lot of these streets. Go down to Bahama Village. So, you know, I think these neighbors should list one item at a time and find some common ground with the city. You know, these people live here. I live here. You're talking about their lives 24 hours a day. You know, I look at your chart here, and on the corner of Grinnell, my corner, it's not my corner, but it's not even on Varela, it's around the corner. They're taking out 2 palm trees.
Where is that?
Right here. Unless I'm reading it wrong, it's not even on Varela.
Oh, that's actually on Grinnell, because if you look at Grinnell, on that side of the street, there's an existing sidewalk that stops.
I
And
know
what
where that
we're
is.
doing, we're tying into that sidewalk so we have a continuous path. It would be silly for the city to leave 15 feet of grass between 2 sidewalks. So we're making that connection. Those trees, most
I know.
likely, will be relocated.
And so
So-
that's
which
nice
is
for us
good.
to hear that.
But
Let me talk about.
that's why those trees.
Don't
Let
they
me
die
talk
when
about
you
the
relocate?
block that's down by Watson, because I noticed that your right-of-way on a lot of these blocks is 50 foot,
Yes.
including the one down by, is it Watson, where you're going to tear down walls? There's
The corner
another
of
right-of-way
Watson,
that's
yes.
40 feet. Can't we make that 40 feet? I mean, are you willing to work with these neighbors and not disrupt their lives and come in and tear? You know, I looked on the website today. That wall, the appraiser's website lists that wall was built in 1979
It
or
was actually
1980.
built in 80, yes.
Okay, so was it permitted? Did the city come out and sign off? I mean, why
It was permitted as a 61-foot wall. And if you go and measure the wall, it is 68 and a half feet wall. Unfortunately, at that time, when permits were put in for walls, pools, items like that, we didn't require a survey for some reason. And then when someone comes out and looks at it, yep, it's a good wall. Why it was that way, I don't know. The same with the pool. You know, they submitted in 1984 for a pool. It was built in 1985. What they submitted was a sketch indicating to the city that the property line was a wall.
So what you're saying
So-
is that 7 foot of the
7.5
wall,
feet.
it's not actually 7 foot into the property? I'm confused.
The wall
It's 7.5 feet over
into city property.
City right away.
And the city didn't argue that when it was built? They didn't come out and look at it and say,
The representation on the permit was that that was on their property.
Yes.
No survey was presented, and the wall was built. Then a year later,
about
2
4
years,
or 5 years later.
4 years later, a pool permit was applied for, and they represented on that the wall was their property line. Okay.
Well, I would've thought
A
the city
survey.
would
When
have-
we surveyed, we showed the 7.5 foot over. We asked the people in the neighborhood to provide any surveys that disputed it. We actually got a survey from the property owner, I think through you, that showed that at their closing, they were on notice that they were 7.5 feet over
The
in
day
the city
prior
right
to
away.
closing.
But everything
encroaches. We all know everything encroaches in Old Town. When I had my closings, I hired an attorney. I said, "Oh God, I'm not going to buy that property. That encroaches." And then I learned everything encroaches here. But I have a specific question. If you have a block that you have a 40-foot right-of-way, and you have another block that you have a 50-foot right-of-way, which is this block in question we're going to take down the wall, will you be willing to compromise with these people and say, okay, for that block, we'll work with a 40-foot right-of-way because we have it on other blocks that we're going to work? Will you work with these people?
For 2.5 months, Christine, we've been working with the attorney representing the owner of the pool, okay? The last contact with that attorney was yesterday, but between the end of September and yesterday, no contact. We actually proposed a settlement agreement or a mitigation agreement to the property owner. And as of yet, we haven't gotten a response on it.
I spoke to Mr. Keenan this afternoon. It seems that your end is not responding to his calls.
Yeah, we seem to be
He's
getting
tried
two
to contact you,
different,
Karen. He's tried to contact
I
you.
spoke with Mr. Keenan.
That's
Friday, I
interesting
believe it was.
because
Well, I'm talking about as of this afternoon.
that's interesting because I spoke to him yesterday.
Okay.
Okay, Terry Johnston spoke to him yesterday.
Yes, and he's not very
Okay.
happy about that either.
And the reality is, we're supposed to, once they engage an attorney, as staff,
Oh, you're only
we're
supposed to talk to their
allow
attorney.
them to negotiate with
Okay.
attorney to attorney.
Okay.
Okay, so for us to negotiate settlements with Mr. Keenan on the sidebar, excluding our attorney, is not the
It's
way
a little gray
it
area.
works.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
I understand.
It was his choice to either engage an attorney or not. We proposed a settlement. We proposed the maximum workaround. It actually has an impact on parking.
So
Of course
what,
it does.
what is the
But-
maximum workaround? I mean, the question was asked about
reality
doing a
is
40-foot.
walls are not sacred.
Well,
The pool, we're trying to save the pool. Okay,
We're
trying to save the pool.
wait, let's
Okay.
try to save this whole
Let's just
block.
answer the question.
And we could really move on. We have no argument,
if I may.
David, we have no argument against the sidewalk. We feel it's necessary. We know there's funding for it now. In 2025 is when it's mandated that everything has to be done. Of course it's going to cost more money than concrete costs more money daily. What can we do to make this all work out? Is it going to be a one-way street with a bike path that
Now,
everybody wants?
That's a
I
good
mean,
discussion.
what's the bottom
okay?
line?
I have more flexibility, and I tried at the last meeting and the first meeting, I tried to suggest that one way gives more flexibility. My staff wants to kick me in the knee for talking about one way because that's not what they designed for.
I know, but
Okay,
it's a
but-
good thing.
But
The
I'll
neighbors
get
don't complain
bruised.
over that.
What's
Your knee will
makes
heal.
sense.
Don't
But
worry
I
about
didn't
it.
get the feedback from the group because it takes consensus. That's a big
The
a
way
big
it was
change for
left,
the.
I thought you were actually going to look at a one-way. I thought that was
they were
going,
saying.
yeah,
They said
that's
that-
what
I
how I
recommended we
thought
look
it
at
was
the
left.
at a one way. I had one couple that told me they liked the one way. One couple that told me they liked the one way concept. Okay. Pardon? It makes it much easier. For instance, on a 40-foot right-of-way, it makes it much easier to get parking on both sides. The reality in that 40 feet, we're only getting an ADA compliant sidewalk on one side. But it's easier, it's less pressure. It means that if you're over 12 inches with a concrete knee wall, I don't have to take it out.
Right.
Okay? It means I can lessen the impact. If in the absence of one way, I need every bit of 40 feet to get one sidewalk, two parking lanes,
And I
parking
really
on
need
either
to
side.
correct that with a 40-foot right-of-way, when we go to put the sidewalks on the other side,
We
that's
will have to
one
come
way,
back.
one lane of traffic, or one lane of parking. That is not parking on both sides of the
We're
street.
not one way.
Only a 50-foot right away.
No, wait a minute. No.
Yeah.
It's a pavement issue, right? That why we can't go to parking on both
It
sides.
has to do with emergency
God.
vehicles, yes.
There we go again.
Actually, Sandy came tonight. I had extensive conversations with him, and we'll talk some more. The impact on Sandy's, for instance, is you can't build a compliant sidewalk behind a head-on parking. The reason for that is because as you walk behind them on the sidewalk, you think you're safe, and the car backs out. Little child that's not tall enough to be seen or isn't seen is run over. That's not acceptable. A wheelchair or whatever. So, non-compliant, absolutely. All right. Now, workarounds. On Duck Avenue, we propose to work around. We build the sidewalk, the city sidewalk, up on their sidewalk. Use their sidewalk as the route, and then dump them back onto the city sidewalk, so that the pedestrian would then be in front of the car. Okay? That would take an easement from Sandy. That would take Sandy working with us. That's the ability to do that depends on design issues and stairways and other things that are site specific. But that's something that we had hoped we would be doing at this type of meeting, working with the individual homeowners and mitigating the impacts. We did on Flagler, we did on Duck, we did on Leon Street. Not everybody got to keep everything that they had, but we minimized the impacts wherever we could. And for instance, Leon went one way. That's where I got the idea. Okay, and at the end of that project, slated to start soon. We've got our approvals, and at the end of that project, that's going to be a much better right of way. The kids leaving HOP aren't going to be walking down the middle of the street, or if they are, it's not going to be because there's not a sidewalk. It's going to be because they're a little hard-headed. Okay, but they'll have a safe retreat. They'll have a safe place to walk, and that's our goal. So their businesses can be affected. Well, I don't want you to put words in my mouth. What I'm saying is very clear. There is an apparent accommodation. Okay, it takes both parties to work out the accommodation. And I talked to Sandy. That's why I didn't stay. Because I told him, look, we're willing to work with you. Here's what we'll look at. I don't know. I haven't looked at a sidewalk on Catherine. I haven't been there. I went on a diet. I've been trying to lose weight, and I haven't been there for a while. How about an accommodation? Well, we got a whole list of them. Okay? We are going one at a time. And all I can do is sit down or work one-on-one with the property owners and work through it. Our first and biggest accommodation, we heard loud and clear parking, okay? And we were in a position where we were killing parking between Margaret and Virginia. Margaret and Windsor, we were killing an entire side of parking, okay? By flipping the sidewalk, getting DOT to approve that. They weren't real happy about it, but by getting them to approve that change, a little more money, change order we were asked about earlier, but by doing that, we maintain the status quo. Okay.
Because we were told we were doing that, and then we found out through the grapevine that the 800 block was going to be moved over. Right. You didn't even tell us. Through the grapevine, through the Key West grapevine, we knew about that before anything was ever said.
David,
you know?
one thing
So you got that pretty quick.
Is that even if you do one way, it doesn't increase it doesn't save any parking. The number of parking remains the same if it's one way or two way. It doesn't help at all.
Is that accurate? I'm fully aware we're talking on Leon on a 30-foot right of way. So we will agree to look at it. And right now we have parking preserved on both sides.
One side, 40-foot right of way on the parking on one side.